We get asked often, why does my chocolate turn white? And is it safe to eat? Most often than not, it is actually totally safe to eat, but sometimes there is a bit of concern there. So quickly, here is one type of white on my chocolate. Now this one is just a bit older. So the chocolate itself becomes a little dusty and brittle. This happens over time. This chocolate, as you can see, we blasted with a little bit of heat. It has these crazy little streaks of white on our chocolate. Again, totally fine to eat. If you see any type of mold, anything that is more questionable than this, just pitch it aside. So today, I have a tempered piece of chocolate, meaning this is totally fine. There's no question it's safe to eat. But let's run a little bit of an experiment. Let's try and make this as white as those samples, and then let's try and bring it back to a finished chocolate good. So we have some heavy hitting equipment here, crazy scientific stuff you might not have at home, but let me bring it out. You know, the good old microwave. The microwave is one way to melt chocolate. It's another way to destroy it if you leave it in so long. But for today, we're gonna blast this chocolate just for a few seconds and get it melted. Let the chocolate sit, and then you'll start to see those streaks appear. So it doesn't take very long. Really all we need is maybe like 30 seconds or so. If you are doing this to melt chocolate to use as like a drizzle or something like that, you want to be very mindful of how long it stays in your microwave. If you go too long, what actually happens is it starts to burn it, and there's no coming back from that. In this case, I'm just going to town. I'm going to let it melt fully, throw it in the fridge so I'm not too worried. But if I'm making a ganache or some type of like coating to something, you don't want to ruin it. All right, still needs a bit more time here. So after we finish melting our chocolate, I'm going to blast it back into the fridge just to speed this process up. It is, I guess, my form of movie magic, but I don't want you guys waiting here all day long. I was always told never to look into a microwave, but I don't know if there's actually any truth to that. Maybe someone out there can let me know. Okay, chocolate is definitely warped. It is melted like crazy. I could probably run something through it just so we can make sure. Here we go. Yeah, so we're definitely melted here. So what I'm hoping for is when I put it into the fridge and when I bring it back out, we can start seeing some of those white streaks appear. It does take time, and I will explain why. Basically what's happening and why your chocolate is turning white is the fat in your chocolate has melted. And it has resettled itself on the surface of your chocolate. So it's not bad, it's another expression of chocolate in general, but it doesn't look as nice. And for us as chocolate makers, what we're trying to do is temper our chocolate. Tempered chocolate has a beautiful shine and snap to it. It's partly about presentation, it's also partly about transport. Tempered chocolate does have a little bit more of stability to it, whereas something like this, not so much. Like when this solidifies and I put it in my hand, it will melt on me. So there are perks to it. So let's get this in the fridge and then we'll check back in a few minutes. All right, so I have one more sample of untempered white chocolate. Now this one actually looks pretty cool. And I think for most chocolate makers out there, they come to admire what chocolate can actually look like. So this is just the chocolate that we made into a sample for a client, and I always keep a little bit for ourselves. But as you can see on the side here, we do have some crazy marks. If I were to get this without knowing what it was, I may question, is this mold? Has this gone off? And no, it hasn't. Chocolate is really shelf stable, so I don't have to worry about that, and especially because I'm the one who made it, so I know exactly what's in here. But you can fix white chocolate. You can fix untempered chocolate. Basically, we need to go back and re-temper our chocolate. So that involves melting it, cooling it and adding in what we call like a seed. And basically that is, for in this case in particular, it's crystallized cocoa butter. So it doesn't take too long if you need to have, I guess, tempered chocolate for a presentation. But I just want to show you how you can go from something like this, which looks pretty nasty, to something that is really nice and shiny. It has presentation-worthy chocolate. So again, throw this bad boy in the microwave. This one will take quite a bit longer, so I don't want to burn this. 30-second intervals is really all I want to do. When I get to the point my chocolate is above, I'm going to go in Fahrenheit here, around 95. I believe it's also around 35 Celsius. That's the point where all of my crystal structures within my cocoa butter or my chocolate have broken apart. So there's no dominant crystal structure taking hold. Tempered chocolate is what we call form 5. Like within cocoa butter, there's 6 different types of structures that can exist. So by warming it past 95, it's a blank slate. And then as we start cooling back down, we can help influence which type of crystal structure we want to take hold. And that's what we're going to do today. So once it starts melting, I'll grab my thermometer, give it a few tests just to see where we're at. Because the higher we go, say I melt it to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is totally fine, it takes way, way longer for it to cool back below 95, and that's kind of where I need it. So I'm going to try and keep it as close to 95 as I can, get it to a point where I can add in my silk or my tempered cocoa butter, and then I can mold it into whatever shape I want. So for those of you wondering what cocoa butter silk is, it is the crystallized version of that form 5 that we want from our tempered chocolate, but just as cocoa butter. And I have some here, and I mean, it looks exactly like cocoa butter, but we've submerged this in a sous vide for about a day at 92.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that does is it allows that crystal structure, the stage 5, to dominate the structures that are available within this. So as we pull it out of our sous vide, we let it re-solidify, we have something that acts as kind of like a culture. Like you want it to take hold of whatever you're putting it into. So this is exactly what it does. And why I like tempering with this cocoa butter silk is it's very repeatable, it's very fast, and you don't need a lot of tools. Like anyone can do this at home. All right, so we're pretty much there. So at this time, if you are to temper your chocolate and using the silk method, the easiest way of going about it is understanding how much chocolate you start with. In this case, we have about 300 grams. And the reason why is because when you use silk, you're adding in 1% of silk by weight. So in this case, 300 grams, I need approximately 3 grams of shredded silk into my chocolate. That's all you need. And that's why I really like this type of tempering method, which we can detail in another video as well. But for now, let me just shred some in, and I can show you how quickly you can take your chocolate that is kind of ugly, maybe white, streaky, whatever, and make it into something rather beautiful again. So I am just going to shred directly in here. I'm gonna do the classic, which I guess a lot of bakers probably don't like, is an eyeballing method. Typically, if I'm making truffles or bonbons, or if I'm tempering for a customer, I'm going to be very accurate with this number. But I have an idea of how much 3 grams looks like. So I'm just going to shred until then. So now I've added my silk. All I'm looking to do now is mix it in, integrate it pretty well. What I do at this point is I let it sit. I stir it in just till it's all fully coated, I guess. I let it sit around a minute, and at that point I give it another good solid stir, and then I use it into my mold. If you wait too long and it starts to solidify, you can just kind of nuke it back in the microwave, or you can use your double boiler just to bring it up to temp again. Of course, if you go above that threshold of 95, you risk bringing your chocolate out of temper. So just pay attention, do it in little bursts, and see how it goes from there. I'm gonna grab one of our molds here. And I'm just gonna top some chocolate in, just so we get an idea of how we bring it back to where it once was. All right, sorry for the noise. I just eyeballed it again, but it's just to give you an idea of how you can bring your chocolate back to a tempered state. So this now has to cool and fully solidify, which will take a few minutes. So I'm just gonna pop this in the fridge for a second, but at the same time, I'll grab back out that sample that I over microwaved so we can get an idea of what untempered and that white streaky chocolate looks like. One thing I'm learning also is station management. My partner Katie would be proud for me to mention that. I'm rather notorious for leaving things everywhere, so this is my best, I guess, approach at a clean workspace. So I grabbed out the chocolate. This is a sample that I had microwaved. Upon closer inspection, it's pretty clear that it's kind of gray. It looks like it's moving into the direction of one of these cups that I had shown you at the beginning. And I guess one thing to note is the migration of fat does happen over time. As this chocolate solidifies, it's not going to turn white and streaky just like that. It's going to take a little bit of time. So one thing to note is that the streaks that I had shown you previously don't just appear immediately, especially if you had microwaved it or your chocolate bar had sat in your car when it was a hot day. It does take time for that fat to migrate and to fully settle or solidify into place. But if I were to look at this, I could tell something was wrong because it just looks kind of fake. I don't know, there's like this weird, dull brown kind of, I don't know, not shine, but like, it's like almost matte. So another thing you can do is, like with untempered or out of tempered chocolate, typically if you are to grab the sides and it starts melting in your hand, it's a really clear sign that your chocolate has gone out of temper and is still out of temper. And this is what's kind of happening here. So what we really need is, I guess over the course of the next day or so, just seeing how this changes. We can see on the back actually that it is starting to turn white. A clear sign again that our chocolate is out of temper, yet still edible. Okay, our chocolate is solid. It's ready to be flipped out, and now you can kind of see what I have been describing this whole time. Yes, when your chocolate is white and streaky, still edible. It may not look as good, but you can bring it back there just by quickly tempering it at home. Doesn't even need to be knocked out. So again, we went from something kind of like this to this. And all it takes is just paying attention to some temperatures and giving it a go at home. Actually, I kind of prefer this kind of stuff anyways, so if you do have the white streaky stuff, just try and eat it. The texture changes, it's actually pretty nice. Cheers, guys.